There's something nice about starting this in the store menu.
I mean, the store menu is kind of the best thing to start it in.
That's true.
You gotta buy your stuff.
You gotta get that submachine gun ammo, as it were.
Alright, so welcome to Digital Output. My name's Alessandro Rienderosa.
My name's Chad DeAngelis.
And I'm Matt Leonard. And today we're gonna talk about Ubisoft. We're gonna talk about what they've been up to the past year and a half or so, and kind of like what we're how we're feeling about Ubisoft right now and their games. This right here that you're watching is The Division.
Tom Clancy's The Division.
Tom Clancy's The Division, part of Tom Clancy's
ongoing series of everything he does.
Ongoing Gunniverse. You know.
We also had another Tom Clancy game this year, Rainbow Six.
Rainbow Six Siege. And
they're making a Ghost Recon for this year?
What is it? Ghost Recon Wildlands is coming out at some point in 2017. I forget the exact date.
Is that an Advanced Warfighter game?
No. It's just Ghost Recon.
Okay.
Advanced Warfighter was that weird thing that they did.
I mean, I liked it. It
was
fun. Pretty much this game plays exactly like Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter. Like,
there was some
exactly like it.
Some of those Ghost Recon games from the mid 2000s were good games.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ubisoft. I'm gonna say this for myself. I feel like they kind of lost their way a little bit back in 2013, 2014 or so.
It was a lot of the same is what they were producing.
It was a lot of the same, and I'm not gonna say that what they've produced recently isn't a lot of the same in that it's mostly over-the-shoulder, third-person action games. But many of the concepts and what they're exploring is very different. Earlier this week, For Honor was released, which is a Ubisoft Montreal production, and that is their most recent game as of this recording, and it is a third-person, kind of like a action fighting game, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
And how does it play exactly? Because I've yet to try any of the beta stuff, but
you could argue that it's kind of like Dark Souls in that it has a stamina system and it's very melee focused. It's a very weighty system, and you're committing to attacks, I think is the best way to describe it. You're never able to pull yourself out of doing an attack, but essentially there are the three main factions, which are basically knights, samurai, Vikings, and then there are characters within either any of those. There's 12 at launch, I believe. That all play a little bit differently. They all play a little bit similarly, and it's basically a game of rock, paper, scissors in some sort of way. And also the way that general combat works is that you are basically aiming from a certain direction or into a certain direction. And let's say you're swinging in from the top, whoever you're fighting has to block from the top to block that, and then same thing from the left or from the right, which creates an interesting dynamic there. And starting with For Honor, kind of exemplifies what I think Ubisoft is doing very well right now, and that's they're allowing their teams to explore areas in a way that a lot of other developers aren't really right now. No other developer is making a game like For Honor.
And even there are franchises like The Division that are something kind of familiar. It's a Tom Clancy game. It's a third-person shooter. It's cover-based. There's still a lot here that we haven't really seen before. It's kind of a blend of Destiny and Ghost Recon in a lot of ways.
Exactly. So the thing is, so you're playing The Division right here. This is a new character?
Yes, this is a brand new character. We're in one of the starting zones. I'm not doing particularly well, but...
This game was released in early last year. I think it was Q1. I forget the exact date.
Yes, it was March 8th, I believe.
Yeah, this was a very beginning, I think, of the year game. Yeah, there was a lot of hype behind it. I remember
there was a lot of hype for this game.
People, lined up for this game, and it was
the beta was really good.
And, honestly...
8th of March.
Honestly, it was kind of I think the first big hubbub gaming-wise, I think, of that year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was smaller things, but I think, generally as, a AAA title, that's what
Yeah, I mean, this game was
big deal.
released, was announced back in 2013, and it took almost a little bit under 3 years to come out after that. Along with Watch Dogs 2, the first Watch Dogs, and a few other games from Ubisoft, it was hit with a lot of negative press and negative publicity when people were like, hey, this game's graphics are not as good as it originally looked. What happened here?
A general trend that we seem to be noticing in gaming as of late.
And I mean,
especially Ubisoft, though.
Oh yeah,
is something that you look at Watch Dogs and look at the original announcement trailer and then look at the release, and it looks like it's a different game engine in some cases.
And it's not like any of these games look particularly bad. Like,
No.
The Division still looks beautiful if you're
The Division
watching
is
this.
a really good looking game. If a little bit
Dated.
yeah, not even dated, but almost like sterile in a way. It's like, oh yes, this stuff is dirty, but we designed it that way.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. So this game is actually from The Division is from Ubisoft Massive, and this is off of their basically proprietary game engine Snowdrop. It is so far the only game that's been released that is using this engine. It was designed specifically for this game, as kind of this shared world multiplayer
MMO
experience.
thing.
That's kind of an MMO, but not quite an MMO, because otherwise you'd see a whole lot more going on.
Yeah. And I mean, that said,
Well-
this game still has dungeons, essentially, and it has groups that you can do, and it has really good matchmaking from what I'm to understand.
I mean, the thing is that we haven't gotten to
The end game.
the MMO aspect of it is in the what's the phrase for it?
Oh, the Dark Zone.
The
Yeah.
Dark Zone. That's more so, where you go out and you quest for loot and it's all,
Open PvP.
open PvP, dog eat dog. That's more so where this game kind of gets
Yeah.
into like more of like an instanced kind of
Mm.
MMO type, experience. I mean, I guess that you could say it's an MMO in the aspect of like, it is massively multiplayer and the player base that plays it
Plays it.
and dungeons, raids. I don't think necessarily you need exactly humongous hub worlds for it to be like an MMO.
No.
So I guess you could argue it's kind of like a different direction that they're taking it. More of like a modern direction that they're kind of going with it. And it's kind of like following the trend of console MMOs that we're starting to see right now.
The Destiny
Yeah.
comparison is quite apt. It works in a very similar way, except it is a third-person cover-based shooter.
With less space and more Tom Clancy.
Yeah, with less space and more Tom Clancy's Gunniverse. Post-release, this game has been given a lot of support from Ubisoft Massive, to the point where they basically stopped making post-release content for a while to fix problems that were in the game, to basically address issues that became apparent once it was out in the wild, and got to really commend them for that, for basically putting
All the new content on
basically
hold.
fiscal responsibilities on hold to make the game worthwhile just in the state that it was.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely refined the base game in exchange for delaying future content, which, I mean, I knew some people were upset about initially. And some people thought, the general, like, MMO trend of, like, just give us the new content and fix it then, and we'll deal with the base game until then. But if I remember correctly, this game did have some major problems.
It
on
had some
release.
big problems with like the Dark Zone and how basically PvP and everything like that worked.
There were a lot of exploits, too.
Yeah, and some like loot generation I think there were problems with it. I forget exactly. It was a while ago at this point. But the big update for The Division came out. It was called Survival, which basically was an entire new game mode, and it had been very well received by the vast majority of the people that play the game, and kind of gave it a bit of a second life, which is really great to hear for a new IP like this. I mean, new IP within the Tom Clancy
Yeah.
thing.
And I mean, this game doesn't quite look like it's a new spin on something we've seen before, but
Yeah.
it is a very distinctly new spin, which is a lot of what Ubisoft's been doing.
So beyond that, Ubisoft released another game at the near the beginning of last year, Far Cry Primal, which
Speaking of new spins,
is which is a first person. It's a Far Cry game, but it's set in the what would you call it?
it's set in the Paleolithic age, essentially. So it's cavemen.
You're a caveman.
Cavemen and mammoths.
It's just it's not necessarily anything based in reality. It's more so just like the stereotypical idea of prehistoric people, spears, nature, like.
And it's
scary.
interesting because they did do their research on it to make it. I don't want to say like accurate. That wasn't necessarily their biggest.
They created
goal,
their
but
own language.
Authentic is
Authentic,
more so what
yeah.
we're looking for here.
Yeah, authentic is the word probably that would best describe it. And it came out. Let me see, February 23rd in 2016 for PS4 and Xbox One, and March 1st on the PC. Which was another Ubisoft Montreal game as like the main developer.
There's some interesting stuff going on in that game.
Yeah, but I think the big thing there is that they allowed the developers to go and do something different, do something that we weren't really seeing, especially in AAA game space.
And while Far Cry Primal definitely, one of the best weapons in the Far Cry franchise has been the bone. It's been a really exciting weapon. And Far Cry Primal kind of takes away your gun toy box and your like open world power fantasy, and it makes it much more about a kind of survival and primalism of trying to like forage for food, and if you encounter a crocodile in the middle of the lake, it's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, and they kind of also went into that with the we had a playthrough here that we went through where basically we put it on the permadeath mode.
Oh yeah,
and we tried to go and see how far we could get through the game, and that really, honestly, I'd say if you were to play that game, that's the way you play that game. Like you play that game as, you die, you're dead, and it really takes it into a whole new spin on what that game could have been. I think like in the future, if they were to revisit that, I feel like designing that game around that survival aspect and maybe making it a little friendlier to just having permadeath.
Yeah.
would be a good design decision. Because I think one of the biggest strengths of that game is how terrifying it can be, and the survival of actually surviving.
One of the best modes that game had. That is, I'm pretty sure Far Cry Primal is, at least for me, the first time I've ever seen something like it. Is its difficulty called Second Chance, where essentially it's permadeath, but if you've been playing for about 5 or so hours, it's going to give you a second chance if you die. But if you die like twice in a row hardcore, you're done. Which I think is a really interesting. It's like a soft permadeath, so death still has a lot of consequence, and you should still be scared of it. But it's not gonna ruin your day and make you not want to play the game anymore, which I appreciate.
I also appreciate that as someone who is very afraid of permadeath runs, outside of something like XCOM, because XCOM is its own beast entirely. Yeah, permadeath has always scared me. So, Far Cry Primal did not get too much post-release content, if I am remembering correctly.
It didn't have a lot of noise post-release, honestly,
about
it.
It didn't.
It didn't even have really a lot of noise pre-release.
It's kind of like a weird sleeper, and
I don't even know if I'd call it like a great Far Cry game, necessarily.
I mean, most people don't. It has a
completely different
roughly
feel.
a 76 on Metacritic. But actually, I'm looking at the Metacritic ratings for these games. So Far Cry Primal has basically an aggregate of a 76, or really a 75.5 if you want to be specific. For Honor, the most recently released game, has a 76 on Metacritic. Tom Clancy's The Division is sitting at about an 80 on Metacritic, a 79 on the PC version. And then you have Rainbow Six Siege, which is somewhere around a 76. So all these games are actually kind of middling with critics, especially upon release. But almost all of them have had a lot of post-release content. And the way that they're doing post-release content, I gotta give them props, because they're being very clear about what it is and what it's going to cost you. It's especially something like Rainbow Six Siege or For Honor. They have, this is, we're going to be releasing these new characters. This is how much characters cost if you want to buy them in game and you just want to spend money to quickly access whatever you're looking for. And they're just very clear about the fact that the games are monetized, but they're also 100% playable without you ever spending money, which is what they all obviously should be. Hey, you died right there, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Okay, just want to make sure that you knew. As you can tell, Alessandro was terrible at third-person shooters.
I'm still learning the ropes. This is my first time with this game.
So Rainbow Six Siege is actually the one that I'm interested in talking about right now.
That's the one I know the most about.
So Siege was released at the end of 2015, December 1st on the PS4 and Xbox One, and then December 7th on the PC.
Initially got a lot of flack for being a full-priced multiplayer-only game.
Got a lot of flack about that. And then over the next year or so,
Kind of evolved, honestly.
evolved into its own special game that still has a pretty, devoted
Active player base.
and active player base. You know, people that are constantly doing crazy things in it, and people that are really pushing the game to wherever they can.
If you ever go on YouTube and you ever look at for example, those clips channels, I don't necessarily follow them supremely, but it's you can generally get a kind of a barometer of what's popular based on the clips that people are sending into these shows. Because obviously those shows only show clips of stuff that's popular and stuff that people want to see. And if you go, you see a lot of clips coming in from Rainbow Six Siege nowadays. There's a lot of
Almost always.
There's a lot of player base and time being spent on this game.
Oh, yeah.
And for a multiplayer-only game that's starting to get, I'd say,
A little bit long in the tooth.
Long in the tooth,
Especially for a console game.
Well, I mean, it's also on PC, but especially
but on the consoles, that's,
Yeah, but
it still has a pretty active player base.
yeah, it's interesting to see that it's still surviving so well, I would say. Even though, I mean, I know of its merits as a game, because I've played it, but it's interesting because we usually don't see multiplayer cycles that long for games, especially on consoles nowadays.
Exactly. So, for those of you who don't know, Siege is a first-person tactical shooter, I guess would be the best way to describe it. All of the game modes, as far as I know, all of the game modes are attack-defend game modes.
Yeah, it's a lot of... basically, the whole idea is, as its namesake, Siege, there are attacking teams and there are defending teams. It's class-based, it's a tactical shooter. The classes are differing depending on which team you're on, which is a very interesting dynamic because that means that no matter what, you are going to have different attack and defense fire teams. Because you literally cannot play the same classes. You cannot have the same kits. You're working with different tool sets here. But the whole idea is that there's an objective that the attacking team is obviously going in to do, and the game ends whether time runs out, so the defense just stalls out the attack,
Or everybody on the...
everybody on either team dies. So it's an interesting dynamic because I would say it's probably one of the best implementations of attack defense I've seen in a game.
Definitely.
Because a lot of games, have attack defense modes, or even games that have attack defense aspects. Even just a basic capture the flag mode, I would say, is an attack defense style.
Something like Overwatch even right now.
Yeah.
That has a lot of attack defense. Where it's stick on the payload, but most people don't even pay attention to the objective in Overwatch, which is why that entire joke exists, where it's stay on the payload.
Yeah.
Whereas with Siege,
you have to complete your objective.
but also because there are multiple ways to go about doing that, you're really open to do it however you wish.
It's very interesting because in a similar strain of the sort of destruction that we've seen the Battlefield series go to, and I would say more so emphasized in, say, the Bad Company way, as
Small
I remember.
scale.
For example, I remember Battlefield Bad Company came out, and a really big deal about it was that it was destructible environments. And it's not to say that the Battlefield games have gone away from that, but it's not necessarily such a strong tenet as the maps were designed in, for example, Bad Company 2.
Have you played Battlefield 1? But that's another discussion.
I mean, I played Battlefield 1 with you, but I didn't feel like it was so intensely designed in the same way.
I mean, it's not integral, but it's very important that it's there. Whereas with Rainbow Six
But
Siege...
the thing is that integral in Rainbow Six Siege. It is literally a basic tenet of the map design in all the ways that you can manipulate those environments, which is it allows for a lot of creativity and variety in your play. Because, for example, when you can just blow through a wall, and it can be any wall,
or you can just shoot through a wall,
or you can shoot through a wall, or you can blow through the friggin' ceiling and fall right down into a room,
or make other people fall into the room.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that those matches can go, and a basic map can become something very special when there's so many ways to manipulate it, which I think has led to a lot of its longevity, because you can just do so much with it.
There's a very high skill gap in a way, or like talent maybe,
and just there's a lot of ways to approach it, and there's a lot of ways to both combat it and use it to your advantage. Because a big part of, for example, the defensive team is knowing a lot of the basic tactics and picking the right tools to both facilitate or detract from what the other team's doing. Because, for example, sometimes you do want to facilitate the offensive team to, operate in the way you want. But also you may want to plant a mine on the wall so that, they straight up just can't do that, because it's a common tactic and you don't want them going through the wall. That's very bad if they go through it. So, I mean, I could talk about it just a lot, but I mean, the runaround conversation that we're basically going to have is it's a very interesting game of cat and mouse, where it's attack and defense done really well, and in a way that we haven't necessarily seen before.
Or on it's weird, because it's such a controlled scale, essentially, is what allows for that kind of complexity.
Yeah.
The maps aren't terribly huge.
They're not huge, and they're small-scale teams.
Yeah.
It's like 5 or 6 man teams, basically. It's small fire teams, and, you get 1 life per round, and you just go. Which is interesting.
And it's also something that, again, you don't really see a lot of other multiplayer shooters going in that direction, where it's a slower-paced game. It's more tactical. It's integrally tactical. Unlike something like Battlefield or Call of Duty or really anything like that, where you can just kind of go in guns blazing and you'll get something done.
Yeah, no. If you just straight up go in Siege, you're probably gonna get your stuff shot up, and then your team's gonna be down a member, and everybody's gonna be cursing you out on mic.
Hey, Alessandro, did the red barrels explode in this?
Maybe.
Can you want to shoot one for me? There's one over there.
The gas things, yeah.
Yeah, shoot that red barrel.
Wait, hold up. Ooh, there we go.
All right, good.
Good game design.
Good to see they're still holding onto that red barrel.
It's a good trope.
So the next game that I want to discuss is Watch Dogs 2.
Yes, I've heard so much about this game.
So Watch Dogs 2 released the fall of last year, the fall of 2016, November 15th, and then on the PC 2 weeks later on the 29th of November. And it is the sequel, of course, to the Watch Dogs game set in... the original Watch Dogs is set in Chicago. The Watch Dogs 2 set in the San Francisco Bay Area.
It's a very divisive game.
Really?
I would say so. I mean, it sold well, but for the most part, the general consensus, I would say, is some people feel very, very positively towards the original Watch Dogs, and some people
like bad games then, because the original Watch Dogs is a pretty bad game.
I think it did what it wanted to do in many senses.
Yeah, sure, it did what it wanted to do.
It was definitely a...
But it didn't do what people thought it was going to do.
It was definitely a game that definitely reveled in the trend of unfulfilled promises that we have seen
which
for
was
years
a lot of
and
Ubisoft
years and years.
For a good time, but Ubisoft got their advertising on the ball, knew what they were trying to do with Watch Dogs 2, advertised that, and that's exactly what they delivered on.
Well, what's different, I guess, would be my question.
So Watch Dogs 2 is a little bit more irreverent. They have a little bit more fun with themselves.
It's less, my nephew, who I never really knew, is dead, revenge.
Exactly, it's less, this is a weird convoluted story, and more, this is, some kid hackers having some fun. And
so they kind of took the feeling more so of the E-trips in the first game is what I'm kind of hearing.
Yeah, they went into
of the world.
They went into a funnier direction because for most people that the grittiness of Aiden Pierce
was
not
you
interesting.
His name?
He's a bad character.
He's a pretty bad character, whereas
but
Marcus,
memorable.
Marcus in
Marcus looks
Watch
fantastic.
Dogs 2 has been very well received as far as what I've read. No one's been like, man, Marcus is such a boring character. He has nothing going on besides, I'm mad about this thing that happened to someone that I don't know that well. Basically the entire game has been designed in a way to kind of allow players to have more fun.
It reminds me a lot of just the Assassin's Creed game, like, progression, where Assassin's Creed 1 was kind of this thing that, like...
It was a prototype.
Yeah, it was basically like a game that wasn't fully fleshed out in its potential.
Yeah.
And, like, while it's... I think it has a place. Like, looking back, I don't think anybody's going to look at Assassin's Creed 1 and be like, yeah, this was a pointless game.
No.
But Assassin's Creed 2 is when they got it together.
Exactly.
Nobody's going to argue
and Assassin's
about
Creed
that.
2 kind of went in the same direction, where they had a little bit more fun with it, but they also knew what they were trying to do a lot better.
Yeah, and that's how I felt
Characters were
about...
a little more fleshed out.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
that's how I felt about Assassin's Creed 2, is one, as you said, Ezio versus Altair is a much more interesting
Altair isn't a
protagonist.
character.
Exactly. Ezio is a much more interesting character. Which, I mean, obviously, they pretty much made, like, 5 or 6 games with the dude. So, like, obviously he's a pretty
3?
okay.
3. I think it was 3.
And then they had the mobile games and stuff, right?
I'm not going to count those.
But, point being, main character's way better. Sounds similar to Watch Dogs 2.
Yeah, Watch Dogs 2's
Sounds like
Bay
they got-
Area is a much more interesting thing.
Just like how Venice and, you know...
Exactly,
2
just
is
how
way more
Venice is a more interesting thing in,
It sounds
in
like-
Assassin's Creed 2.
It sounds like they found out the tone that they wanted to go through way better, which is
Yeah.
a similar thing to Assassin's Creed 2, where 1 was kind of toneless.
And the game's tone stayed very much so the same throughout.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, from what I recall, Watch Dogs 1 kind of bounced back and forth between being super serious and then the gameplay not being super serious.
Yeah. It sounds like mechanically, too, they also got it
Oh,
down.
yes, definitely. Mechanically, Watch Dogs 2, they added some like remote-controlled cars and like drones and stuff that you can use to hack, and that just allow you to do more with the tools that you were given, which is...
I think everybody remembers the tech demo originally.
The
of
tech
Watch
de- yeah,
Dogs,
well,
which was so cool.
Yeah, and I mean, the driving bits of that game is what made that game shine, but it doesn't really fit the tone of
Of
the
what
rest of the game. Of Watch Dogs.
Really?
Yeah, no, I love the driving in Watch Dogs.
Weird.
The original
Most
Watch
people
Dogs.
did not.
No,
To
I
the-
loved it.
To the point where they brought in Ubisoft Reflections to redo the entire driving mechanics of their engine because it was so poorly received by the vast majority of people. Which is very interesting. Watch Dogs 2 still has its weird cooperative multiplayer that I don't like, but some people seem to think it's kind of cool. Overall, also Watch Dogs 2, it's on Metacritic, which you can take or leave, has the highest rating out of the games that we've talked about besides, I believe, Rainbow Six. Sorry, I forget the exact numbers. No, yeah, I think it is the highest rated.
Rainbow Six was 76.
Yeah, it's the highest rated out of these with about an 80 between the PS4, Xbox One, and PC if you want to average those out. And none of these games are lighting critics on fire. Like, we can, like...
But they're all selling.
But, exactly, they are all selling. None of them are 10 out of 10 from everyone or, 90-somethings on Metacritic. But they are all doing what they are advertising that they are doing, and are doing it well enough for a group of people where those people are continuously playing the game and spending money in the game. Which...
And I think from what you kind of were more so working towards when you wanted to talk to us about this is, like, eventually if you take chances like this, you do strike gold.
Exactly. Like
they're making good games and they're not losing money.
yes.
Like, so eventually at some point they're going to take a chance that's going to be wildly successful.
Exactly. Which,
Like-
Watch Dogs 2 very much so could have been if so many people were not burned by Watch Dogs 1. Which I think is the biggest problem there.
That should have been Watch Dogs 1, basically.
It really should have been.
Which is what they promised us.
Or Watch Dogs
basically.
1 should have taken more time. They shouldn't have revealed it so early. Whatever it may be. I think that Ubisoft, whoever's, really producing these games and whoever's, controlling the production has kind of understood that they need to listen to their fans more, which is, also why they took a break from Assassin's Creed games for last year. Because after the train wreck that was Unity's release, and then Syndicate coming back with less than stellar reviews and less than stellar sales because people were burned by Unity, it's kind of the same thing with Watch Dogs and Watch Dogs 2, where they are taking that break.
They had a lot to make up for.
Exactly, so they can get it off of people's minds and then get the story and the direction that they want to go in, and they want to tell that story. Which I think is another thing that I think Ubisoft is doing very well right now, and they are advertising to the people that they know will like this, whatever it is. They know who will buy the game or who will like the game, so they're advertising to them. And I think they're doing a good job of not having just outblown expectations about what their games will do. Like For Honor, while it's somewhere around in the mid 70s on Metacritic, the people that are playing it are absolutely adoring it. From what I've seen, from streams that I've seen, from feedback on the beta, and I think that's the key that Ubisoft is doing right now, is that they're catering to the audience that is playing their games.
Well, I think there's also just this falsehood idea that, like, a game needs to be a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 to be a great game. I think if you have a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, but it hits your sweet spot, then that can be your own personal 10. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
Which is why review scores are kind of bogus in most cases, but they do help you get kind of a general feel for how a lot of people are experiencing it.
Well, yeah, it's a tone check,
Yeah.
Heat check, basically.
Heat check, yeah, exactly. It's kind of, how's this doing? Hey, Alessandro, what's going on in the Division right now?
We're getting
Tell me about
our
this.
butts kicked. There's just these enemies that are super, super tough. And I think it's because there's a lot of people in this group. It was just like, hey, you're looking for a group. Like, why don't you just join these people? And everyone's pretty butthurt on the chat right now.
You guys also seem to be, like, not playing this like the tactical shooter it is and kind of just running and gunning.
It's not like that tactical. It should be more tactical than they're playing it, though.
Well, it's a cover-based shooter, and they're not really using that.
Cover is important.
It's kind of hard to survive when you just keep taking bullets to the face.
So this is actually a good example of what we're talking about, where there's still active communities, where we have 2 other level 3s in the game right now.
Well, 3, actually.
Well, 3 if we're including Alessandro. We have 2 other level 3s playing with Alessandro. Oh, 3, excuse me, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there's a lot of us here.
So
We're not doing fantastic.
4 of you, you're all, I think, level 3 or level 4. And
We're doing better this time.
You're playing the game almost a year after its release.
In the starting zone.
In the starting zone, you're finding people that are playing it, that probably just picked it up today, yesterday, or starting new characters, whatever it may be. So there's still active communities, and Ubisoft, again, is catering to those people and is finding the right way to do microtransactions and to sell DLC so that enough gets out to those people so that they're making money and able to continue producing these almost niche games that they're producing, because not that many people are going to be like, oh yeah, a like 3-faction third-person fighting game is definitely what I want, where it's all melee combat. That's in most cases like not what people are really looking for, but they're able to do that because these games are funding themselves. And they're getting
they also seem to be like
good word of mouth.
Yeah, they seem to be advertising effectively.
That's the thing that I think Ubisoft is doing very well right now, is that they are advertising very effectively.
Because I don't think they're taking losses really on anything. Like, for the most part, it seems like, I mean, Alessandro and I were looking up just a list of like all of the games that they've released in like the past 2 years, and it was kind of just like, name one of those games that like we can effectively be like, okay, they took a huge loss on this, and it's really not. It seems like they're kind of just, maybe not necessarily killing it.
Yeah,
but
definitely not all of them are breaking even, but they have big sellers like Just Dance, and that allows them to fund these big games.
It just seems like in general they're in a good place. Like they're making enough money where they can, as I said, keep taking chances, and eventually these sorts of games are going to pan out big for them.
Exactly.
Because the thing is that they're taking chances still, and they're not making bad games. It's just they're not making the masterpiece they're searching for.
Exactly.
They don't have their next Assassin's Creed 2, if that's what we're, I think, assuming is like their biggest hit in like the last 10 years.
That along with like maybe the Far Cry 3 and 4 were very, very well received. I'm trying to think some other like really big games from them.
It's really Assassin's Creed and Far Cry are their
I
bread
mean,
and butter.
it is really Assassin's Creed and Far Cry in a lot of ways.
I think they had a new Trackmania, but that's kind
They
of
also
like a
do
niche
like
thing.
really good like smaller games as well.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
This War of Mine was Ubisoft.
Well, also
That was
Grow Home
published,
and
I
Grow
believe.
Up.
Yeah, it was published by them, but still, like they went out and brought that in along with something like
They had Child of
Child
Light
of Light.
the
Yeah,
past few years. That was probably, honestly, if I was to look back, the moment when they started not being just cookie cutter anymore. They kind of like took that. I mean, obviously, people have a lot of feelings about Child of Light, about the whole like, big developer trying to do the whole indie thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was when they stopped trying to just be cookie cutter, like, Activision, we're going to make Call of Duty every year. Like, you know what I mean? Just cash again.
Yeah.
And they tried taking chances. That was, like, their first step into it. Because that was 2014.
Also, the Rayman, the new Rayman games that they've created have been very well received.
Those
both,
are good games.
both by old fans and new players alike.
Those are fun games, I will say.
Also, I figured out why we're having a tough time here. Evidently, it put me into the hard mode one, even though I opted out of that.
Oh, so that was your problem.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys just try a little bit harder? They also made the club a while ago. Ubisoft did.
Yeah, I was talking to Alessandro about that today.
I actually don't know that much about how people feel about that game.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it was another one of those
It
6,
just kinda
7 out of
happened.
10s.
it was like it definitely had its player base, and like
Yeah.
people liked it. I mean, I wasn't necessarily a humongous fan about it, but it was also one of those games that like for like a year, maybe like 2 years, or like that was released like a year ago, 2 years ago. When was it? 2015. It's kind of been. It has been at least for PC, it's been like a benchmark game for like ever since it came out.
Exactly.
So, like,
but that
I
was
know
because the engine wasn't that good.
Yeah, I mean, I know that generally those games, benchmark games, get a lot of buys.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, I don't know, for whatever reason, those games do okay. So I know they didn't necessarily take a humongous hit on it. I think they made a second one, or they're looking to make a second one.
They might be developing one. We don't know anything about it as of this point.
I just remember hearing that wasn't, a one-time thing.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think Ubisoft makes games to do one-offs. Which is
'Cause-
also something that is interesting. And I think something that isn't a bad thing, because even if, they make a game, it sells 3 million copies, they make that money back, and then they spend the exact same amount of money, and then make another game that sells exactly 3 million copies. You're still taking that money in. You're still doing well for yourself.
And generally, it seems like in video games, it's like you can sell a sequel that will do better than the previous game.
Yeah.
Like people,
That's almost to be expected.
yeah, people are completely content
Yeah.
to be like, I haven't played the first game, but because you're playing it and you're experiencing like the game and the mechanics and everything, that doesn't necessarily like mean so much. Like I know so many people that, for example, have got into The Witcher 3 that haven't played 1 or 2 or have any idea what's going on.
Oh boy.
Like I know so many people that's the case for, because it is a good game and it has good mechanics,
or-
and
The Final Fantasy games are really good examples of that, where it's like, you don't need to play the other ones.
I mean, I was talking more so in a sense that even in games where like there's
Stories.
there's stuff going into them.
Yeah.
People are fine to just
Like-
play a game for being a good game.
Exactly. And, that's definitely something that Ubisoft has kind of found. Even if the game might have its issues, if the overall experience is something of fun, something like For Honor, which, from what I can tell, is just a whole lot of fun.
He's goofy.
It is goofy and it is fun. That's really all that you can ask for in games. So, I don't know. Hat tips to Ubisoft. They're doing some cool games. I'm not sure how I feel about Wildlands coming out soon.
We'll see.
I have a lot of history with Ghost Recon.
Yeah.
I really like Ghost Recon as a thing when it's done well. I really enjoyed like Graw like a lot. Like a lot. Those games were fun. I'm interested to see if they can bring it back because I think that's the kind of game that like if they do it right, people would be really into.
Yeah.
And there's not
Like,
you know,
from
there's
the,
not
from
really
the
an
beta experience,
equivalency.
a lot of people seem to be at least liking it. People that are playing the beta.
Yeah, like I just don't think there's necessarily like an equivalency in the market to what a Ghost Recon could be.
Yeah. I also just remembered that South Park, The Stick of Truth, and The Fractured Butthole, which is coming out later this year, were both Ubisoft. And do you guys have any like feelings about those games?
Those games are good.
Because
I played the
solid.
first South Park one. It was pretty okay.
yeah, I don't like South Park, so I'm not going to comment on it one way or the other.
I think, regardless of the whole South Park aspect, I think it's the best when you're a South Park fan and you're into that style of humor. But I
Yeah.
think just as a game, it's solid and it does its job, and it is a straight up passion project.
Yeah,
That's really it. It's just if you enjoy South Park or you're even just mediocre about it and you're just looking for some laughs, you'll enjoy it. Like,
And do we think that they advertise like those games are being advertised well?
Yeah,
Like
enough. I mean, I think people know about
well
them.
as in to the right audience. They aren't trying to sell the games as something else.
I think if you're a South Park fan, you know about it. And
Exactly.
you've probably played it, or
All
you've
right,
seen
so
it.
that's all I needed to hear.
Yeah, or you've seen it on a Steam sale and like, you know, you've been like, hey, this is $5. Maybe I'll try it.
do
Like,
you guys know how to throw grenades in this game?
No. I don't remember how to throw grenades in this game.
Because I am looking around.
Hit
At,
the G button. I don't know.
I'm trying, man.
I know, you don't have a keyboard. I'm sorry. Look, that's all I got. It's G or like L1.
press F.
But
Pay
neither of
respects.
those are really things that you could do. Yeah, I mean, Ubisoft. I really want to spend more time in For Honor. It is a cool game. This here is the Division that you're watching.
It's pretty alright.
You
We,
are.
we shouldn't be playing in hard mode right now.
No, you shouldn't be. 'Cause
Yeah, I think we're
It's
not
been a
doing.
while.
I think we're not doing this game complete justice with having Alessandro be a complete fish out of water
Yeah.
in hard mode and just like
And
taking,
just like not even knowing how to play. But
taking L after L after L
Yeah.
and just like continually dying. I'm not even sure like what
I'm-
the end point of this is. It seems like you keep dying and you guys just keep respawning.
yeah,
and, like,
I'm trying to get out of matchmaking, but it's not as easy as it should be.
Well, maybe they need to work on their UI a little bit.
Maybe a year and a half later.
Hey, Ubisoft, fix your UI, but keep your advertising the way it is. Also,
I mean, this game has really pretty UI at the very least.
Ubisoft has like, they always know how dumb E3 is, and they play to that, and they just bring Aisha Tyler on, and then they have a good dumb time, and then they make more millions of people buy Just Dance.
Yep. Yeah, Just Dance. There's a Just Dance 2017 that came out. Those games are good.
Yeah, it came out in 2016, and it's coming out on the Switch, which is
exactly what we needed.
exactly what we needed. Oh boy, we could have a whole thing about the Switch.
Uh,
I have
we
a lot
really
of
could.
I have a lot of words about the Switch,
I have a lot of
Oh,
hopes
here we
for the
go.
Switch.
but we'll
Finally.
talk about that I think on another day.
I think we're good.
About ready to wrap it up, guys.
I think we've rambled on enough, and we've probably made whatever viewers bored enough already. So.
So this was digital output. Next time we'll play a game that we're good at. I promise.
Yeah, this is a podcast kind of thing.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys listening. We're still kind of working this out a little bit.
I don't know what to call this quite yet, but
It's a let's talk.
it's a labor of love.
digital outcast. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Hey,
That's all I thought of too. Well, till next time. My name's Matt Leonard.
my name's Chad DeAngelis,
And my name's Alessandro.
and we love you, and we'll see you next time.